You are now tuned in to the Project 365 experience.
It's like it's weird to say, and I don't know if you could kind of like understand where I'm coming from, but you know, I got the chance to just first see you firsthand when I coached against you when you were at Heritage.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that experience, because staying in the moment, I honestly, from the outside, it felt like if you stayed there, you would have been good, because you really, I felt the joy that you were having while you were coaching those games. It's weird to say, but I don't even know if I'm making any sense.
No, I get what you're saying, and it's funny because my brother Justin, who still coaches at Heritage, when I left, he still stayed on. He always coached with me. He's my older brother. We still chat about just kind of like the love of being a part of building, right? Like I think that's what it comes from. I think like how you're raised and like who you surround yourself with growing up kind of like shapes how you are. And so like I'm the youngest of three brothers, right? So like I had two older brothers that kind of like taught me and showed me what to do and what not to do. And one of the things that I think I learned from my both of my brothers, both Justin and Steven, was like, hey man, if you're gonna do something, do it properly. Like stop wasting your time. Like my brother said something really profound to me one time, my brother Justin. I was just out of university. I was just kind of like figuring out what I was going to do in terms of work, like so many students do, right? It's a long time ago now, but it's one of those things where I remember him saying something to me about like a job one time, or I think like it was about a job, but at the same time I was trying to like eat cleaner and like devote my attention into my fitness and all that kind of stuff at the time. And I remember him telling me, it only takes 21 days to change a habit, right? For human beings to go through their process to rewire their brain, it only takes about 21 days. So 3 weeks for a human to really form a new habit or to break an old habit. And he said, it's pretty intense, but he said to me, he goes, B, he's like, if you can't do something for 21 consecutive days in a row and commit to something for just 21 days of your entire life, he goes, what's the point of being alive? Like you have no control, you have zero control.
The discipline, yep.
And he goes, so what's the point of being alive? So I share that with you to say, at Heritage, I think the reason why I enjoyed it so much is that I kind of adopt that mentality is if you can't do something all out while you're doing it, then what's the point of being there? What's the point of being a part of it? I think that sometimes if you set your sights on the things that are coming down the road, it's always great to plan. It's always great to plan. But I think if that's where your mind goes and your energy is focused into the majority of the time, man, you're not, what's the point of living? And like my brother said that to me. So like, whether it was high school, club, Heritage, like wherever I was, I never thought about the next thing. It was always just about how good of a job can I do right now? Because I don't know. Again, it's hard for me to explain because I don't know why I am the way that I am and why I think that. And I have bad days. Trust me, like I'm a planner. Like as a coach, you have to be looking down the road. So, but there's a difference between planning and then there's a difference between like dreaming or daydreaming or getting distracted by things. It's completely different. You can be organized in your thought process for the next 12 months, but if all you're thinking about is I can't wait for 12 months from now, then you're going to miss so many things. So Heritage was a great opportunity for me. Because
that season, sorry to cut you off, but that season, like you're going into it, but that season, like I don't think people realize how legendary, just from the outside perspective, that was. For people that don't know, Heritage was relegated. It was a CJEP D2, right? So CJEP D2, that's the equivalent of JUCO, right? Kind of JUCO a little bit, JUCO prep, relegated to the second division. You guys end up going up one division, and then you go undefeated. Like in the span of like literally from what I saw, literally 2 years. The turnaround was so quick. Like, what was the keys to the quick turnaround?
So it fits well, I think, with what we're talking about today. So a lot of people don't know this, but like I took over that program years before that, right? Like I was there from 2014 until 2019. and everybody only remembers kind of the end of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the program that I inherited at Heritage at the time, the year before I got there, they had been relegated back to the Division 2,
Division two.
right? And the year before that, they were 1-17 in the top division. So they had a really bad year and they got relegated. And then they had 1 year where they were relegated and they went 8-8. And that was the team I inherited. So the next year, so they were 8-8, and then I came in. When I came in, the program lacked direction. And I don't think that was the fault of the previous coach or anybody in the past. I just don't know that people understood what Heritage was. It was a small English cégep in a predominantly French-speaking province where the expectations for what they could be was very low. And I think that people just kind of leaned into the low expectations, low results mentality. And so when I went in there, I essentially just said, the first thing I want to do is I want this to be a place where people want to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And nobody wants to be in Division 2 Cégep. And I
Yeah.
realized
Yeah.
no one wants to be there
Yeah.
because clearly if you're there, it means that you weren't good enough to be in a higher division, or B, circumstances in life, no one saw you, no one recruited you, whatever the case may be, but no one really wanted to be there. And I think that once you accept that reality and you embrace that reality and you change the mentality of, okay, we're here now and let's be present in where we are, I think that's where it changed. But that took me 3 years to do. And so my first year, we were 11-5. The second year, I think we were 15-4. And then the last year, I think we were similar, like 15-4. And we had made the playoffs every single year, but we had lost in what's known as like the barrage game, which
Yeah.
is the blower teams play the better teams.
Yeah. Kind of
Right?
like the equivalent of the play-in.
That's
Let's
right.
have a play-in to get into the playoffs. Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
exactly it, right? So we had that game 3 times in a row, and all 3 times we were knocking at the door, like, but we lost, right? We lost every single time. And so after that third time in a row of losing, um, I'll be honest with you, man. Like I had some not some doubts about myself, but more so doubts about culture is culture, right? And you can fix things, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to run into a wall, and then you're going to start to question whether the things you're doing are the right things, or more importantly, whether they work.
Right.
And what I was faced with was I had to look myself in the mirror and say, what you're doing is good, but it's not good enough. And when I came to that realization, I kind of put my focus into like overdrive, man. Like I really turned it up a gear. And what I did was I said, you want to know what Heritage has never done? We've never actually recruited. And and people kind of like frown when they say that, like, well, no, of course you recruited. You went to high schools, you recruited kids. Yes, but I think one of the big things about Heritage that made it very unique, and I'm not afraid to say this, is that as an English speaking Seja, we're very limited in our ability to land English talent on the Quebec side.
Mm-hmm.
However, given its geographical location, where it's literally 5 minutes from Ottawa across the bridge into
the bridge. Mm-hmm.
right? It's like there's essentially an untapped market of talented student athletes who ultimately don't all get recruited to university out of high school. They don't get recruited to OCAA schools, which is the only system they would know being in Ontario. And so it's like, why don't I go and start expanding the network over to that side? And so that's what I did. And that was a really unique year, that last year, where we kind of came out of nowhere in the eyes of many.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was because that was a very, very cool year where I think we had 9 guys on the roster. We started the year with 13.
Yeah.
But
it felt like you guys were like 8 deep, just beating everybody.
and that's kind of what it turned into, right? It was a very unique team. All 5 starters were from outside of the province of Quebec, and I don't think that's ever been done before in any level of Seja, which was really unique. We had a kid from New Brunswick and 4 kids from Ontario, and that team was really special, with a lot of really special guys that really embraced that. And I really always try to thank them for putting their faith and their trust into me. I mean, from that group, we had 2 guys go on and play post-secondary. All 5 of them very easily could have. But the timing, I think, of me leaving and then COVID hitting, because people forget, and this is big on, and I don't want to jump, but I think the most proud piece that I have of my time at Heritage is not winning the championship and not going undefeated and all that. My most proud moment was when I had left and gone to Brock to become the lead assistant there. I think the definition of the culture that you create is not what you do when you're there, but what you leave behind. If a program can continue its level of, success or excellence, whatever you want to call it, even if the coach leaves, that's when you know you made an impact. And what made me most proud was when I left the next year's team had moved up to the higher division, and they finished the year in first place. I think they were 16-2,
And then COVID hit.
And then COVID hit, and they were and I mean, you know me a little bit. Like I'm not a big, I'm not like a big booster. Like I don't talk a lot of like nonsense. So you know what I mean? Like I don't talk.
Yeah.
I'm very like low key with that stuff. But my thing is, like that year's team had more talent than the team before, and I'm very confident that that year's group was going to go and do just as well. The undefeated thing is the undefeated thing, but like that year's group was so deep with talent. They had guys that were, generating interest from multiple youth sports schools, and then COVID hit. So that was really proud for me that even once I had left, because of the success and the culture of the program, we were able to continue recruiting. The next year, again, we had 5 kids from out of province. We only had 3 guys return from the previous year's team. But the group itself had expanded, and word got out that we were kind of doing something very unique, and that guys were going to get opportunities if they were good enough. And that was probably my most proud thing, man, as I left it, and it kind of like took off. It even got better. And even this year, right? You look post-COVID, 4 or 5 years later, I mean, they still qualified for provincials this year. They were a top 4 team. So it sustained itself, right? So that's the thing that I'm most proud of, is that I think the group, we put them on the map, so to speak. And then since then, I think they've stayed somewhat, they've stayed relevant, and they've maintained a respectable, stature amongst Quebec basketball. And I think that that's the true sign of like establishing a culture.
For